Isn't it fun to be in the spotlight for a little bit? You should be proud of the hard work that you've done. So far, you've learned how to tell the important events in the order that they've happened. You've learned how to add details, words and sentences that tell actions, thoughts, and feelings that make your story more interesting. Well, today we're going to take another step toward being fantastic personal narrative writers. Today you are going to learn how to use temporal words, like first, then, next, after, last, finally. That's such a funny word. Say temporal words. Today you're going to learn what those are and how to use them as a writer. Your learning target is this. I can draft a personal narrative story by including temporal words to signal events in order. When we're writing our draft, it's important that our story is moving from one part of the story to the next. We have beginning, middle, and end. And have you noticed that sometimes when you're looking at your draft, it almost feels like we're jumping between the parts? You say what happens at the beginning, then you jump into the middle, then you jump into the end. It's not very smooth or connected. Well, writing is really interesting and exciting when one part goes smoothly into the other part. That's what it means to add temporal words. We need some special words that help us move between the parts of the story in a very smooth way. Temporal words make it smooth. It's important that we include them so we can help the reader move smoothly from one part of our writing to the next part of our writing. It helps them keep track of the order the events are happening in and how our ideas are linked together. There are lots of different kinds of temporal words that we can use when we're writing. Some temporal words we use when we want to introduce a story. We might say things like to begin with or at first to show that this is the first thing that happened. We might even introduce it by using time words like one day or one morning or yesterday or last week. Those would be words that tell our reader that this is the first thing that happened and this is when it happened. Another kind of temporal word is a word that tells the order of events during the story. So what happened second? What happened after that? You might say next, or also, or later on. Those words tell the reader that your story is still moving forward. And then we use temporal words to wrap up our story, to give our readers a clue that the story is about to end. We use words like in the end, or at last, or finally. Those words give our reader a clue that the story is about to end. Let me try adding some temporal words to my story. Remember, we had talked about how my story is kind of choppy. It doesn't flow smoothly. We're going to see if some temporal words are going to help make that better. Let me take a look at my first page. I went with my friend Kelly to Indian Rock's beach to play and look for shells. Well, I need a temporal word that shows that this is the start of my story. So I'm going to choose a green word. I think I'm going to use the word first, because this is the first part of my story. First, I went with my friend Kelly to Indian Rock's beach to play and look for shells. Yep, that sounds pretty good. My reader knows it's the first thing that happened in the story. Do you see what I put after the word first? That's a comma. Remember, a comma separates words or phrases in a sentence to give the reader a pause. When we use temporal words at the beginning of a sentence, we usually put a comma. Okay, now that I've introduced it, I'm ready to move to my next page. Remember, I want to make a smooth transition. I want to show that this is the next thing that happened, so I'm going to choose a yellow temporal word. I'm going to say the word then. Then, comma, we walked along the shore. So now they know that first we went to the beach, then we walked along the shore. I poked the sand with my fingers to look for shells. I put them in our bucket. Time for me to move to the ending. I need to choose a temporal word that's red that shows that I'm wrapping up my story and finishing it up. I think I'm going to choose finally, because this is the last thing we did. Finally, comma, when our bucket was full, we raced back to our towels to count them. I really think that that made my writing sound much more smooth. First, then, finally. Now my readers know the order that everything happened in. Now it's your turn to practice. I want you to choose one of the stories from your folder. I want you to retell the story out loud, but this time try using a temporal word to go from one idea to the next smoothly. So you'll start with a green temporal word to introduce your story. Then as you move into the next idea, you'll choose a yellow temporal word. Then as you move into your final idea, you'll choose a red temporal word to show that you are wrapping it all up. Once you practice doing this, go to the next Nearpod slide and record your ideas for your digital teacher to listen to.